What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and welcome back to another top 10 list here on Comics Explained, and we're doing the top 10 best fight scenes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And just to shatter your expectations here, the fight at the end of Avengers Endgame is not number one on this list. Number one, I think, is going to be a little controversial, to be honest with you guys, and I'm curious to see how people will respond to it. But coming in at number 10 on our list is the fight between Taskmaster and Black Widow. Now, I love this fight. I think it's one of the absolute best fights the MCU's ever had because it showcased Black Widow at her best, and it gave us the best depiction of what Taskmaster's capable of. When it comes to Natasha Romanoff in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, she doesn't have much to offer when it comes to a battle that involves Thanos or the invasion of New York or Ultron or something along those lines. But you put her in a room with somebody and say that person needs to die, she's great when it comes to that kind of a thing. When it comes to hand-to-hand combat, she's virtually untouchable. And I'm kind of amazed that we never got a fight between her and Steve Rogers in the MCU. But what is cool about this is that despite all of her capabilities and everything we'd seen her pull off over the course of her time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, between this movie and what would basically be a time skip to what was effectively her first appearance in the MCU, when it came to like Avengers and all that kind of cool stuff and so on and so forth, that her skills hadn't changed all that much. Now, I don't say that to drag her down. I simply say that because how she fights is basically the same. So she's essentially the same fighter in the Black Widow film as she would become and as she would be in the future of the MCU, meaning we basically saw her at her best. And when you have her at her best going against someone like Taskmaster and being painfully outclassed, it's amazing because Taskmaster, to face off against them isn't to face off against just one person, it's fighting an army of people. And to watch Taskmaster face off against Black Widow while simultaneously jumping between people like Captain America and like Black Panther and Bucky Barnes and even Black Widow herself, it was amazing to see, and it was so unique just in terms of hand-to-hand combat. So that's why we have it here at number 10. But coming in at number 9 is probably just one of the most epic fights ever, even if it didn't offer anything huge and meaningful to the greater MCU. The fight between the Incredible Hulk and the military in Edward Norton's Incredible Hulk film. I specify Edward Norton because, as most of you guys know, he played the Incredible Hulk in the MCU before Mark Ruffalo, which really kind of begs the question, which one of these guys was a better Bruce Banner, Mark Ruffalo or Edward Norton? Post your answers down in the comments because I want to know your opinions on this. But in this fight between the Incredible Hulk and the military, this was one of those really, really cool moments, and it's really more awesome because of the context of the situation as opposed to the rewatchability of it, in the sense that when you go back and you look at that whole conflict, you wanted the Incredible Hulk to win. You wanted him to overpower the military because you saw the military as just this kind of oppressive force that kept being used by Thunderbolt Ross to try to capture the Hulk and wouldn't just leave him alone. And so to watch that whole fight unfold, to see him turn into the Incredible Hulk and to see him just lay waste to the military, which never had a chance in the first place, it was almost kind of like sitting there and watching the man being taken down, right? Like, bring Thunderbolt Ross down a few pegs. It was cool to see. And to see the look on Thunderbolt Ross's face, like, oh, okay, so we bit off more than we can chew with this whole battle. It was great. It was just this phenomenal moment, but more so than that, and I think this is something that the Marvel Cinematic Universe just hasn't readily captured outside of that moment and the events of the first Avengers when basically the Incredible Hulk was smashing things. They haven't captured that well, right? The ability to just show the Incredible Hulk tearing things up, smashing stuff, just doing what he does best. It's only been shown a couple times. Outside of that, it's largely character development. But showing the Incredible Hulk just smashing and destroying and so on, I feel like that moment in that film captured it perfectly. Everything that you want from the Incredible Hulk was right there for you to see in that fight, and it was the first time we really got it. But coming in at number 8 on our list, I think is just one of the most unique moments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in terms of fight scenes, the fight between Doctor Strange and Doctor Strange, not in Marvel's What If, but in the Multiverse of Madness. And I don't think this fight would have been anything like what it was had it not been Sam Raimi who was behind the creation of this film. But what got this fight scene on our list in the first place was the unique nature of the fight scene, right? The instance where like Doctor Strange hits his fingers on the piano and strums those musical notes and then starts using music as a weapon against himself, it established a few different things in the MCU. The first is that when you're using magic, anything and everything can be used as a weapon. But the second thing that it did is it started laying down the rules and the groundwork for how magic gets used in the MCU, because for the most part, there aren't really any rules at all. It's just what a person can do and what a person can't do. And that's basically it. There's really nothing else besides that, being able to alter reality, being able to transmogrify things, and so on and so forth. But having this fight unfold in such a unique way, shooting musical notes at each other, guarding using musical notes, so on and so forth, it made the fight so unique and so spectacular and so fun that I can go back and watch it time and time again, which really leads me into the idea of a video that we need to make here on Comics Explained, which is the top 10 most rewatchable moments in the history of the MCU. But coming in at number 7 on our list is the first fight between Black Panther and Eric Killmonger. Now, I loved this fight. If I'm being honest, there's a couple things I would have changed. For example, what made this fight so significant in the comics is that it was Eric Killmonger with no powers fighting Black Panther when he had his powers. But more so than that, I think this is one of those fights that is so rewatchable and so amazing because of the context of the fight itself. That up until that point, when it came to T'Challa, he was the rightful heir of the throne of Wakanda, right? To rule the kingdom as its new king. When Eric Killmonger showed up, he was like, no, I challenge for that rule. And he had a legitimate claim to it. Not only that, what you knew was going to happen is that these two guys would basically face off. One of them would rule, but in reality, they both had legitimate arguments. They both had legitimate cases for why they should do things. Eric Killmonger believed that Wakanda staying two hands off was the problem, right? That there were so many individuals out there, Black Americans, who were struggling, and that the power of Wakanda could be used to make the world a better place, more for the Black community than anything else. At least that seemed to be the message that was being sent across there. But beyond that, it was one of those things where, sure, like Eric Killmonger was willing to do some shady things, but it was all for the greater good, right? Sometimes you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. But you looked at the path of Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa, and you're like, but he's also got a point too. And so you didn't quite know which side to choose. You didn't quite know which one was going to come out on top here. But the other thing that made it so awesome was the context of the fight, that the fight was rooted in the culture of Wakanda. So it was an extension of how Wakanda functions on a cultural level, the kind of history and things that they bring to the table. That whole thing was just phenomenal. But the other thing that made this so awesome, and this is one of the things that I loved most about it, the hero lost. The hero didn't win in that fight. And that's something that we were so used to when it comes to superheroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is by and large, they usually always win. And even if they don't necessarily win, they don't lose like that. By all standards of measurements, when that happened, because the movie came out after the events of Civil War, by all standard of measurement, it was like, damn, like, is he gonna stop being Black Panther? Like, is this it for T'Challa? He gets thrown off of a cliff. He doesn't have his powers. There's no real way for him to recover here under any conceivable means. How in the hell does a person survive that? And it was those kinds of questions that sort of gave us this feeling, even if it was only temporarily, and then we reminded ourselves, oh, that's right, it's a Marvel movie, don't worry, he's gonna be back and the day's gonna be saved. But it was in that moment, with that fight, that it was like, damn, this might be the end of him, right? That fight right there, that moment, the whole thing, that definitely deserves a spot on this list. But coming in at number 6, which I assume it's still part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm a little fuzzy on where things stand in terms of the canonicity of stuff, the fight between Punisher and Daredevil on Netflix. Now, that fight was great. And the reason why is because it was a fight between two guys, but also two philosophies. There was no better depiction of the Punisher's philosophy and how it stood against Daredevil than when they're on the rooftop and the Punisher tells Daredevil, when you knock them down, they get back up. When I knock them down, they stay down, right? And he tells Daredevil, you're a half measure. It's because of you that people keep dying, that you beat the hell out of criminals and then they get let back out on the street again, right? And Daredevil's, oh, you know, they have rights, you know, and the response of Punisher was, no, right? They don't get that, right? Like, they lost that when they started taking lives. They lost that. They lost that right to life. They lost the right to equality and all that when they started committing those heinous crimes and killing people, right? Like, I fixed the problem. You put a Band-Aid on it. And I loved that philosophy, right? I love the philosophy of the Punisher. And I mean, here's the thing. Those of you guys who are new to Comics Explained, I'm 100% a villain. Oh, I'm absolutely a villain. Give me superpowers. I'm gonna do some bad stuff. It's gonna be in service of the greater good, right? But like, I'm gonna break some eggs to make some omelets. Have no illusions about that, right? I'm not Captain America, man. I'm not gonna take the high road. Some folks are gonna die, and that's just the way that it is. But it's one of those things that's really, really cool. And I love that because it was a fight between a guy who does what it takes to get things done and a guy who doesn't. And so it was just this phenomenal thing because the fight between the two of them was just bare knuckle, right? Just knock down, drag out, brutal Netflix fighting. And I really hope they keep that in the MCU. I don't know if they're going to, but it was more of what these guys stood for in terms of the two of them fighting than it was anything else. But coming in at number 5 on our list here is probably one of the coolest moments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in recent memory, the fight between the Scarlet Witch and the Illuminati. And I loved this, right? A lot of people give it crap, because they're like, how could Reed Richards possibly be the smartest man alive if he tells Wanda how to defeat Black Bolt? Let's be honest with ourselves. Reed was doing everybody a favor. Reed Richards, like John Krasinski knew Black Bolt sucks. Reed knew Black Bolt sucks. He's like, this guy sucks. He drags down the team. Hey, Wanda, here's how you kill Black Bolt so we can get this guy done and out of the picture because Black Bolt sucks, right? Let's be honest with ourselves, right? He sucks. He had to go, right? But having her face off against the Illuminati was cool because what it did is I think it showed, one, how ruthless Wanda had become, how far she had fallen, but it also showed how much control she had over her powers. It's one thing in the Battle of Kamar Taj when she's shooting fireballs at a force field and trying to find a way to penetrate it. That's not overly interesting. What's really cool and what I always enjoyed when it came to reality warping were the small subtleties, right? Just taking away Black Bolt's mouth and having that be a kind of in-movie illustration of how useless he is. But it was cool, right? To see her just use reality warping on that level and to just show how powerful she was, that she was just crushing and taking all comers. It was amazing, right? I loved that, where she just demolished them all. It was great. But coming in at number 4, and this is really gonna be one of nostalgia, the fight scene between the Trinity and Thanos, right? Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man against Thanos. Now, this is one of those moments where I think it just showed how capable Thanos was, but the fight was just cool, man. There was no greater meaning here. There was no higher philosophy, right? It didn't fill us with existential dread, right? It wasn't as though we were watching this and our minds went to a higher state of entropy. It was just an amazing moment where these guys were fighting and Thanos was just countering all their moves. Just a team up between the Trinity. It was great, right? They were fighting to save everything and all that kind of stuff. You knew they weren't going to beat Thanos. You knew the entirety of the last 10 years of the MCU is not going to come down to Thor and Iron Man and Captain America defeating Thanos. And that's it. But to see these three guys team up, right? And to see them face off against Thanos and to see Thanos hold his own against all of them, just one of the most beautifully shot fight scenes. There was so much emotion and we as the fans, it was just one of those, we just got caught up in the moment and it was like, oh my God, this is going to be so great. Let's be honest with ourselves though. As soon as those guys lined up to fight Thanos, the first question we had in our mind, is this the moment when Captain America picks up Thor's hammer? Because we knew it was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen, but it was really exciting and I absolutely loved it. But coming in at number 3, right? As you guys know, when it comes to our list, the top 3 are when we really start breaking out the big guns and when we really start getting into the cool stuff. Coming in at number 3 on our list is Captain America and Bucky Barnes versus Iron Man. Now, this was just epic. And honestly, I think one of the things that led to this scene being so epic was the trailer, right? The trailer for the fight between these guys. That's what was so cool. But in reality, man, seeing Captain America and Bucky Barnes fight Iron Man, this wasn't one of those higher moment type things. It was just cool to see the things they were doing in this fight, right? To literally see Bucky Barnes smash Iron Man with the shield and throw it to Captain America and Captain America just start hammering away on Iron Man's suit. It was the fact that Bucky and Captain America were just working in such unison together. Not only that, man, and let's be honest with ourselves, it was kind of cool to see him bring Tony Stark down a few pegs. Lord knows he needed it. He absolutely needed it. But it was just one of those things where Captain America was literally fighting on behalf of his best friend and the whole wide world. But the choreography, the music, the whole 9 yards, just one of the most epic moments ever, one of the most epic fight scenes ever in the history of Marvel. But that brings us into number 2. Now, number 1 is not Avengers Endgame. obviously it's number 2 here. This fight was epic. It was grand in scale. It was cool to see in scale, right? To basically have everything that happened over the last 10 years lead up to this moment. And a lot of you guys are just like, well, then what's number 1? What's number 1? It was really cool to see like the last 10 years lead up into this whole thing. Now, it was the setting that made this fight scene so epic. It was the setting that made this battle so awesome, because you literally have what's left of the superhero community, those individuals who gathered together, who faced off against Thanos, the ones who survived the snap, right? They were getting absolutely crushed. Thor's down, Captain America's down. Captain America's the only guy who gets back up. And then you get the little radio broadcast that comes in where like Sam Wilson's like, Cap, on your, like, are you there? He's like, on your left. And like the portals start opening and all these people start coming out, and it's the Guardians of the Galaxy, it's Spider-Man, right? It's just all these heroes who were dusted, and it's just this amazing, huge, epic ass moment where all these folks show up. By the way, I'm still one of those guys who believed that moment would have been all the more epic if it had been like the X-Men who had shown up, and like the Eternals if they wanted to be useful for a change in their existence, like all those different things, right? It would have been so cool. But the fact remains, all those portals opening, right? And then it's just like the music's building and it's like dun, 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 you know, and like it all just stops, and then Captain America's like, Avengers assemble, right? And just like I remember sitting in the theater when that happened, and it was so great because it had all built up to that point. Everything that had happened over the last 10 years had built up to that giant battle between all the superheroes that we had met going against the forces of Thanos. And that whole fight scene had just so many beautiful and wonderful moments. And what was so cool about that, they never lost anybody's identity in that fight. And it's very easy to do. It's very easy to lose the identity of Peter Parker, where he's the one that's kind of young and he's vibrant, he's a little bit lost, but trying to be serious at the same time, trying to kind of figure out what the superheroes are supposed to be doing. Captain America being Captain America, Sam Wilson being Sam Wilson. But it was just this beautifully shot moment. And there were a lot of people who had vendettas. Wanda taking out her vengeance on Thanos because Thanos had killed Vision. It was just so many emotions and so much feeling that had been brought into that fight that we were on the edge of our seat the entire time. And honestly, there's only been one moment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe where I think we were ever more just excited than that, hyped up than that. And that, of course, my friends, is the team up between Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield in Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, here's the thing. We had been looking forward to this for years. Ever since we got Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and the multiverse came back in Loki, the question we had was, are we going to see a Spider-Man team up? How cool would it be to have Tobey Maguire team up with Tom Holland, or to bring Andrew Garfield back, or to finally give Andrew Garfield the third Spider-Man movie that we know he deserves, even though all of you guys hated Spider-Man 2 and you hated Andrew Garfield and you never wanted to see a third one, but you're only jumping on board now because of Spider-Man No Way Home. Yes, I'm calling you out. Stop lying. You weren't there when he needed you in Spider-Man 2. You don't get to be there for him now. But the big thing, and what made this moment so cool, what made this fight so phenomenal, is that you're talking about 3 generations of Spider-Man teaming up. And it was really more the nostalgia that made this fight so awesome. It was the nostalgia of it all. Because for a lot of people like me, we were there during like Blade, which is why a lot of us have really been requesting the return of Wesley Snipes in some capacity. But the first real great comic book movie that had come out was Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. It's kind of the thing that set it all off, right? The current movies as they existed at that point in time. You had Spider-Man by Sam Raimi, then you had the X-Men, then you had the Fantastic Four. Again, Blade is really the one that saved superhero films. We got to give that guy his due. Had it not been for Blade, none of those movies would have came after. Let's just get that out of the way right now. But Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, it's nostalgia for us. It's our childhood for a lot of us. We grew up on those movies. And so to see Tobey Maguire return as Spider-Man team up with Andrew Garfield, who I still say was a phenomenal Spider-Man and was criminally underrated until No Way Home, when people who either weren't exposed to him or people who just changed their minds decided they wanted to be fans of him, that he teamed up with Tom Holland. We had all these versions, these 3 versions of Spider-Man from 3 generations coming together and operating as a team. It was just one of the greatest moments. And then you had like just the giant thing of them leaping in, right? And it's that whole segment. It's not even just the fight with these guys. It's the whole segment, right? Spider-Man 1, what is it, like Peter 1, Peter 2, Peter 3, you know, like it was that whole thing, right? We laughed, we cried. Honestly, I still say this moment, right? The Spider-Man No Way Home team up was a better fight scene, and I say it was more epic than Avengers Endgame. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later.